This is Townsquare Sunday. My next guest is Stefani Koorey. She's a researcher and an author specializing in the famed Lizzie Borden case in Fall River. Now, she has co-authored 3 books about the trial of Lizzie Borden, volumes 1, 2, and 3. What it is, I'll have her tell you what it is, but it's basically a court transcript that's been put out so folks can really look at the whole thing and the whole trial and understand it a bit. She also authored a magazine at one time, which is called The Hatchet, which was about, obviously, Miss Borden. Stefani, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
We have, this is a big week.
It is.
This is a big week. Tell us about why it's a big week.
The 125th anniversary of the murders. We wouldn't call it a celebration because it's a week of death, but it is 125 years ago that the murders happened on 92 2nd Street.
For those of you who may not know, Lizzie was accused of murdering her father and her stepmother with an axe.
Hatchet.
On August 4th.
Yes.
She was charged with murder, tried in New Bedford Superior Court, and acquitted.
Yes. Very important, because the whole world knows her from Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks, and when she saw what she had done, gave her father 41, which is completely inaccurate. Fake news. But she was acquitted, and that's a very important point.
What brought you to this subject matter?
My father.
Your father?
My father. He was a man who read a lot of history and got interested in true crime. And he read Sullivan's book, Robert Sullivan's book, Goodbye, Lizzie Borden. Robert Sullivan was a judge, and he wrote a legal evaluation of the case in probably the 70s. And he read the book, and he came to the dinner table, and he said, "So what do you guys think about Lizzie Borden?" And we're like, "Who?" Because I was born and raised in Florida. I didn't have this exposure, and he said, "Oh, well, I want to talk about this." So he passed the book around, made us all read it, so we would all be on the same page, and literally, and so that we could all talk about it from the same perspective, the one book that we had all read, and we did, and we had engrossing debate and discussion about did she or didn't she, and we all came up with our theories, and it became a parlor game, I guess, with our family. And it was ever since I was about 12 years old.
Yeah. But when did you say, you know what, I'm going to write a little bit about this. I'm going to do something regarding the Lizzie Borden case?
Well, I was subscribing to a newsletter that was published by Bristol Community College called the Lizzie Borden Quarterly. That came out after the 92 conference in Fall River, which I did not attend, didn't even know about it. But I was a subscriber to the newsletter with my sister, Khoury, who's also a Borden expert historian, and contacted the editor and began to write for the Lizzie Borden Quarterly. And then he let me know that it was going out of business, and I started The Hatchet. So it was circumstances sort of led me to build a website, lizzieandrewborden.com, which has gone through so many different designs. But on that website now, I want everybody to be on the same page that I was. So I give away the trial transcript. You can download it and read it, the 1,900 pages. The police witness statements you can read, for all this for free. The 2-volume inquest testimony, Lizzie's wills, Emma's will, John Morse's will, and books from the period that are copyright-free domain, public domain books. So you can get on the same page and discuss it. And to discuss it, I also have a forum called the Lizzie Borden Society and Forum, where you can go online, you can sign up, and you can have discussions with other people from around the world about the case.
So, are you an expert in the trial? Would you consider yourself an expert?
Well, my father always used to say an X is a has-been and a spurt is a drip under pressure. So I'm no expert on anything. I know quite a bit about it. Let's put it that way.
What was peculiar about the trial?
Peculiar?
Was there anything peculiar about it?
In what way do you mean peculiar?
Well,
a woman on trial for her life.
That in itself at that time was probably pretty peculiar, pretty different.
Yes, because if she had been found guilty, she was subject to being hanged for her crime. And that was a severe punishment for any woman to have to face. It was unusual for a woman to be accused of a murder of such violent nature. Usually a woman's choice for murder would be poison or something at a distance where they could inflict the kill and then not be around when it happened, so as not to get their hands dirty or to not to have to see it. So this was such a violent experience. Mm-hmm. But the trial itself became world famous. This is why people still know who she is. This was the first trial that the AP service used wires right outside the New Bedford courthouse. And so every day the reporters would post their stories, and it would go throughout the country. So newspapers picked up the stories. So you could be living in Chicago, Los Angeles, Dallas, San Francisco, and be reading day to day the events of the trial. So the whole world had an opinion about it as it was going on, much like the O.J. case, which was about television and radio. You could listen to it and watch it every day. People became involved because they were reading about it, and as they read about it, they thought they knew what was going on and had an opinion. And so just like O.J., who was found not guilty, so was Lizzie found not guilty. And people were outraged, but her friends supported her throughout the trial.
Did the defense team, her defense lawyer, perform well in that?
Well, he got
an acquittal.
Got an acquittal,
so I guess he did his job, certainly.
Yeah.
But was there anything outlandish that he did that probably may have brought about the acquittal verdict?
No, it went to a jury, so you can't say that it was a 3-judge panel at the Superior Court level where the trial was held. And her lawyer was a former governor of Massachusetts, Governor Robinson, George Robinson, and he had appointed one of the judges to the bench. So there was a thought that there was a little quid pro quo possibly going on. And in fact, one of those judges gave quite open advice to the jury before they went off to decide that seemed to point them towards an acquittal also. So there was a little bit of that, I guess, going on, but they decided, 12 good men decided within about 25 minutes that she was not guilty. So.
The prosecutors.
Yes.
Have you looked at their I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
Anything unusual there? Did they press it hard enough?
They did. It's an interesting thing because the district attorney, Pillsbury, got sick, he said, and couldn't prosecute. So he gave it over to Hosea Knowlton, and Hosea Knowlton was the prosecutor for the state for the Commonwealth in the Lizzie Borden case. He was quite good. He ended up, he's from Haverhill, and he ended up, I think, becoming Secretary of the Navy, I believe. So he went on to a very spectacular career ahead of him. I may be wrong about that, where he ended up, but it may be a Supreme Court kind of story also. Mm-hmm. I can't remember. But it was an even legal arguments being presented at the trial. The problem was there was no evidence. There was no evidence to convict her. Now we're talking about 1892. This is a crime that happened before fingerprinting was in use. It wasn't in use in the New York Police Department until after the turn of the century. There's blood typing, so you could determine if blood was animal or human, but not whose. So they couldn't compare my blood to your blood and say that they were different. There was no A, B, O, no typing. There was rudimentary blood spatter analysis, but they very rarely took notes on such things, so you couldn't make notes about when was the first blow and how was it delivered and which blow killed them specifically. And the crime scene was not protected. This is before detectives were a part of police departments. The Fall River Police Department was a constabulary. They kept the peace. In order to get a detective, you had to hire a Pinkerton, and it cost money. And Lizzie and Emma did hire a Pinkerton to help investigate the crime. But there was no crime scene, rules and regulations right after it happened. Doctors who happened to be passing by were allowed into the crime scene. They examined the bodies. They put their fingers in the wounds. They got their hands bloody. They turned the bodies over. They then washed their hands in the water basin and stood around and opined about what had happened. Reporters were allowed to roam freely about the house. The police allowed some citizenry into the house to watch and see what was going on. So there's no, we think of that today as being
there's no CSI.
None at all. So the idea that you could determine guilt or innocence of anybody with that kind of, in the middle of the day, 9:30 in the morning and 11 o'clock in the morning, the murders happen. I have a friend who's an expert in axe and hatchet murders. He is an expert. He actually studies that. I have very interesting friends, I know. But he told me that this is the only murder of its kind with a hatchet or an axe where there's an hour and a half in between the two killings. That it's such a crime of frenzied passion that if you're going to kill someone with that implement, you kill everybody at once. You don't kill someone and then wait an hour and a half, calm down, and get all revved up again and do it again. So it's the only crime in the history to have that kind of discrepancy between the murders, because she was killed at 9:30 and him at 11.
You are listening to Townsquare Sunday. I'm Jim Phillips, and my guest is Stefani Koorey, who I would consider to be an expert on Lizzie Borden. She doesn't consider herself to be an expert. This is the 125th anniversary of the Borden murders. So in various films I've seen, Stefani, there's been a suggestion that others could have committed these murders. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that?
Well, I have studied this case since I was 12, and I can say that every time I go down a road and I think I have a suspect and I take it as far as I can, I hit a brick wall. And then I'll try someone else, and then I'll hit a brick wall. That none of the facts as we know them, based on the testimony and the truth and of the case, leads anyone to believe that any one particular person committed the crime. So I don't know if that means we don't know, we have an unknown that we've never even looked at, sort of like the Jack the Ripper story where they keep coming up with these new people, or if it's just that there's just not enough proof to convict anybody. A lot of authors decide ahead of time when they write their books who done it, and then they only pull in the evidence that supports their theory. And so it's a rollicking good read, but isn't necessarily supported by the whole facts, just the facts that they choose to submit.
Okay, who did it?
I don't know, and I don't care. I really don't. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter. What matters is that no one will ever know. So it's an enduring mystery. It's a mystery that will be unsolved forever, which is pretty cool. And that means that it's something that can be studied, can be explored, can be investigated, can be looked at. You can hone your investigative skills. You can hone your logic. You can search to your heart's content. You just won't necessarily come up with an answer. And that's kind of exciting, actually. After
the acquittal, what happened to Lizzie?
She stayed in Fall River the rest of her life. She lived in Fall River. She and Emma bought a house on French Street, which was about less than a mile away from 2nd Street, up on the hill. And they lived there. She lived there to the rest of her life until she died in 1927. She and Emma broke up as sisters in 1904, and Emma moved away, and they never lived together again or spoke again. There's been some controversy about why. We don't know why. Neither sister spoke about it. But in 1904, Emma would have been 53. I couldn't live 53 years with my sister. I love her to death, but there's no way. So I think in terms of like the obvious answer, which is she's like, I'm out of here. Like, I don't want to be your shadow anymore. I'm going to go have my life.
Well, that's another thing that I wanted to talk about. It seems like people who go through horrific events like that and may be acquitted or they survive or whatever it is, the media at some time would approach them afterwards.
Oh, yes.
And did she ever do any
Every
interviews?
year on the anniversary of the murder, the Herald News Globe would publish an anniversary issue newspaper, would bring it all back up again. And according to what we found out in the new book, 2011 book by the Fall River Historical Society, Parallel Lives, she would take that as an opportunity to leave town and go on a vacation, and she would spend a vacation. Her favorite place was Washington, D.C., so she would go there for a week or so and then come back, or 2 weeks. So she was out of town when all of the brouhaha happened again. So she stayed in town. She never spoke about the case. She never wrote about the case. She never married. She never had any children. She never wrote a diary. She never confessed to anybody. She never talked about it to anybody, and nobody asked her because it was not the proper thing to do.
Did police resume the investigation after the acquittal?
No, they pretty much thought she did it, and they left it at that.
So that was it. That really was it.
That really was.
So with Lizzie Borden, more than a century later, heck, we're still left with who did it.
That's
who
right.
done it.
That's right. There are
and
questions.
You say
that's good.
That's okay.
That's okay. There are questions. I still have questions. There are odd characters in this story, and their behaviors don't make sense to me. But that doesn't mean that they killed anybody. Like Uncle John Morse, odd duck. Will always be an odd duck for me. This is her birth mother's brother who came to visit the night before unexpectedly, stayed in the house, slept in the guest room where Abby was killed, but was out that morning visiting family on Weybosset Street. There's something odd about John Morse, and I can't put my finger on it because his testimony doesn't make sense, and it is discredited by other people's testimony about where he was and what he was doing, but he had an alibi. But there's something odd about John Morse, and I don't know what it is.
What are some of the other projects you're working on now?
Well, I just recently published Historic Fires of Fall River for History Press, which charts 5 different major fires in the city of Fall River. Not all of them, of course, because I had they said, you got to stop. You got to stop. There's been too many. So I cover the major fires in Fall River. Hopefully there'll be another volume. There's that. That's out there. I publish a free literary journal called The Literary Hatchet, which is free to download. You can literaryhatchet.com. You can go get it. And we accept submissions from artists, authors, short story writers, and poets worldwide. And we publish people from all over the world. And we pay our authors for their submissions. And it's published 3 times a year. So I'm staying busy with that. I'm doing work with the Historical Society. I maintain their website, just help design their website. I'm also their publishing arm. So they have now a new press, the Fall River Historical Society Press, and I am their designer, and I help them publish their work. So we're working on a lot of new projects.
Stefani, thanks for coming in.
You're welcome.
She is Stefani Koorey. She's an author and researcher, and yes, I will proclaim her an expert in Lizzie Borden.
Oh, if you say so, Ben.
And thank you again for coming in. Interesting.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me.